We've passed on all we know. 1,000 generations live in you now. But this is your fight.
Honestly don't know if there are words to express how much I love Star Wars.
Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you?
I'm no one. There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you.
My nerd road.
Just let it in.
I'm honestly speechless. It took me a while to actually get to doing the show because of the fact that I just didn't even know where to start. It's my nerd world, and welcome to it. I am your host, Jon Justice, and just got done watching, probably for at least the third or fourth time, the Star Wars Episode 9 teaser. Of course, you know, we've got a name, The Rise of Skywalker, and I'm not gonna lie, I was in tears watching that trailer. I didn't want to be disappointed. I've mentioned on the show before how when it came for the teaser to The Last Jedi, the teaser trailer for The Last Jedi that they showed during that year's celebration, it left me a little flat. I adore that movie. I think that The Last Jedi is a masterpiece, and love The Force Awakens. This trailer delivered in a way that I'm not even quite ready to even fully explain yet. So with the show, and like I mentioned on last week's show, first off, thank you so much for checking the show out. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and it's for moments like this that I do the show, that I have the opportunity to sit down and express my thoughts over what I just watched over the past hour, and then this teaser, this 2-minute teaser trailer for what will be the final movie of this Skywalker saga. I'll tell you, and I'm not even sure where to start. I'm really not. I'm going to be doing several shows throughout the weekend based off of what information gets revealed throughout the weekend, and the plan was always to do a show on Friday, obviously after the teaser trailer dropped. And like I said, I was a little bit stuck going into it. Like, I don't even know where to start on all this. I took notes during the 1-hour panel hosted by Stephen Colbert. And I'm going to get to those notes because it's interesting a couple of things that I noted, that I wrote down, that stuck out to me, that now, in retrospect, having seen the teaser trailer, have provided a bit of perspective to what was said during the panel. So let me just say up front, I loved that teaser. J.J. Abrams' style, his directing, and I'll keep saying it. He for me makes infinitely watchable movies. I find him an incredible filmmaker. I also find Rian Johnson an incredible filmmaker in a much different way. But J.J. Abrams, he just makes just flat up great movies, in my opinion. And the visual in the start of that teaser trailer of Rey on whatever planet that was, and there'll be plenty of weeks ahead to break down the teaser trailer, shot by shot. I'm not going to be doing that during this particular episode. I'm just going to kind of give you my gut instinctive reaction, talk a bit about the panel and where, at least at the moment, I feel like all this is heading. But that opening shot of Rey on that desert landscape and Kylo Ren coming in with that modified, badass-looking TIE interceptor, and then that flip she does over the top of it was nothing short of incredible. That visual was absolutely incredible. I'm going to toss out a real quick hot take on that. I don't think they're fighting. I think they're training. Let that one sink in for just a moment. I think that's actually training. And then again, we got a lot of time to break all this down and to discuss all this. But that was honestly my first reaction. And given the reveal at the end of that teaser, hearing Palpatine's laugh and the fact that Ian McDiarmid showed up on stage after that, all but sort of plays into my idea that if that shot seemed weird, why in the world would Rey go head-to-head with Kylo Ren in a TIE interceptor? I think that she was training. All right, so let's get back to... Oh my gosh. So a couple of things up front, and I'll get back to the teaser trailer. I'm going to basically just kind of go through my notes and see where the conversation takes me, because I'm a little out of sorts right now. I honestly didn't know what to expect, and I was keeping my expectations in check. I mentioned many times that I did not want this to be an Avengers Endgame type of trailer, and to a certain extent it is. I mean, these are supposed to be teasers, but there's a lot to chew on, and visually the movie just looks amazing. But the end of the teaser... That's the Death Star 2. I'm assuming that they're on Endor. And if you own the Force Awakens art book, there was a bunch of concept art leaning towards that. And I've already seen a couple of theories. I spent just a few minutes online looking at some of people throwing some ideas around of how the Emperor could come back. And somebody made a great point. I mean, look, depending on whether or not they bring in a Pelagus tie-in, you go back to Revenge of the Sith, which I'm now going to add to my list of movies that I'm going to watch this weekend, because holy cow, we got the Emperor and his laugh, and then to the dude up on stage. However, if you go back, obviously, to that conversation between Anakin and Palpatine during Squid Lake, and the whole Darth Plagueis the Wise and cheating death, that's a very easy thing to do in bringing the Emperor back in some way, shape, or form. And then somebody made a really good point. I mean, look, if you can chop Darth Maul in half and throw him down a shaft, then the Emperor can somehow, make it out of the Death Star 2 before that sucker goes kaplooey. But they show that imagery and art in the Force Awakens art book, and I'm giddy over the fact that there's a couple of little things that people have pointed out. There might be a Venator-class Star Destroyer in there, but the fact that we're addressing Palpatine, the fact that we're looking at the Death Star 2 and presumably Endor, I'm beginning to really like this full-scale tie-in of what we're potentially going to see. I just want to watch that thing over and over and over again. All right, so let me back up and let's go back to the panel. I'm going to say right up front, I'm not the biggest Stephen Colbert fan anymore. I used to be. But just some of his choices in doing his show, I'm just not the biggest fan of his anymore. However, I felt that he did a good job sticking to Star Wars. That was great. I will say right up front, because I don't want to be negative, that I do wish there was somebody else doing the panel. I wish it had been a Warwick Davis or even an Anthony Bresnikan asking the questions. I understand that they're not going to reveal anything, and that was clearly the case going into the panel, that they weren't going to give a lot away. And I really do expect that that's going to be that's going to be sort of the theme of keeping the secrets hidden in this movie. The fact that they gave us that Palpatine tease and the Death Star 2 at the end of it, I think that's about as deep as they're probably going to get, and they're going to keep a lot of it quiet. However, I do think that an Anthony Bresnikan from Entertainment Weekly or a Warwick Davis would have done a little bit better in giving us something to chew on in terms of production. That was honestly one of the weaker panels that I remember seeing for the films. Between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. I would have preferred somebody up there who was a little bit deeper into the fandom, who could have gotten into questions that didn't reveal anything, but also talked about the emotional experience and the production experience, and I don't like silly hypotheticals when it comes to Star Wars. Who's a better pilot, you or Han Solo? And again, I don't want to be totally negative. I get it. That is supposed to be for mass consumption, and that was certainly Stephen Colbert doing more of a Stephen Colbert type interview like he would do on his show. But for a crowd like that, of hardcore fans that are at Celebration, and for the people watching at home like me, we don't need the hypothetical, goofy, questions. You can get into a little bit more of the details in terms of production and what it was like closing it out. So that's about as negative as I'm going to get, because Stephen Colbert actually brought it home, because the story that he told about seeing Star Wars 3 weeks before it came out really struck a nerve with me. So a couple of things that I wrote down during the panel that I wanted to point out, because I was taking notes during it. First off, Kathleen Kennedy's shoes were awesome. If you're following me on Twitter, Jon Justice, I put a screenshot of them up. They were just these sneakers with these massive soles on them. They were huge. They were really cool. They're really excited. And that's the part that's the first thing I actually wrote down. When Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams came out on stage and they started their interview, they couldn't hide, and Kathleen Kennedy couldn't hide how excited she was about this movie. And I would very much encourage you, when you're done listening to this at some point this weekend, if you're consuming Star Wars content, listen to the show that I did earlier in the week. I did a bonus show based off of a Kylo Ren leak about how he was dealing with his potential affections for Rey at the beginning of the film in terms of a leak. May or may not be legitimate, but there was this lengthy interview that J.J. Abrams did with Fast Company. And in that interview, he talked about how he almost turned down directing Episode 9, how difficult it was going to be to not only continue his story that he started in 7, but also the story that Rian Johnson made in 8. And I'll talk more about that in a bit, because to me, already the trailer takes Episode 8 to a whole other level. And then also having to go and complete this trilogy. And that he said in the interview that he was of the opinion that they pulled it off and they created something really special. That comment, coupled with the reaction and the emotion coming from Kathleen Kennedy, tells me already that they know they've got something special. Content creators, and creative individuals like your J.J. Abrams, and I'll use my favorite band in the world, Depeche Mode, as a really good example as well. These people tend to be fairly humble individuals, and they, in my opinion, from watching a lot of documentaries, they tend to be very sort of cautious in promoting their own work, knowing that art is subjective and not everybody is going to agree with what they saw. I've already seen people complaining about the teaser, but whatever, I don't care. I thought it was amazing, and I'm looking at a screenshot right now of Rey doing a flip over that TIE Interceptor with the red on it, and I'm about to go in tears because that shot was just incredible. I'm staring at it on my screen. It's a Star Wars that I didn't even know that I wanted. That's just amazing to me. That's what I love about Star Wars. Steve Jobs made a comment about Apple, that Apple creates products that, or maybe somebody said it about Steve Jobs. I don't think, and again, going to my comment, I don't think Steve Jobs actually made this comment. Somebody made this comment about Steve Jobs and Apple, and that is that Apple and Steve Jobs makes products that people didn't know they couldn't live without. Star Wars creates content that I didn't know I didn't want to live without. That shot was a shot that I never dreamed of in my own imagination, and now I can't believe that I'm seeing it. Seeing Rey with the Legacy lightsaber doing a backflip over a black TIE interceptor flying across a desert landscape. Just shut up already and take all my money. But the fact that J.J. Abrams said that he felt they pulled it off and they created something special, and seeing the reaction from Kathleen Kennedy tells me they've created something special. I also thought it was interesting, too, in the beginning of the panel that Kathleen Kennedy actually mentioned George Lucas a lot, and you may say, well, why is that unique or different, and how is that, why is... I haven't seen the sequel trilogy bring up George Lucas in the way that Kathleen Kennedy was at the beginning of that, which, again, if I'm reading into it, my gut tells me that's because they really have tapped in once again to the original trilogy and bringing this whole thing first circle. And I'm looking at my notes here now. I can't even read my own. Oh, yeah, and then clearly episode 9 is meant to attach to the whole saga. That was the vibe that I was getting. That's what I was reading between the lines from Kathleen Kennedy, was that episode 9 was, and J.J. Abrams even mentioned it, that episode 9 was what needed to stand on its own, but needed to connect all the other movies. And that's why I'm super happy that, and I'm ecstatic that J.J. Abrams was the one who was brought on board to finish this out because of his inner fandom. It's almost like, for everybody that wants to complain The Force Awakens was a rehash of A New Hope or the original trilogy, and I mentioned that video from E.C. Henry on YouTube. Check it out when you get a chance, and how The Force Awakens was actually sort of a combination of different acts from all the original trilogy. The fact that they brought J.J. Abrams back to finish this out as a big fan, and the fact that he did that in The Force Awakens, to me, lends itself to creating a very special finale. And I don't know about you, but I didn't see any sort of sign in that teaser trailer of any sort of hint that this was going to be a Return of the Jedi, or or a copy of Return of the Jedi. I mean, there's a couple of notes there, and especially seeing the remains of the Death Star 2 on what I just suspect is Endor. You could certainly make that correlation. Obviously, we'll go back there, and maybe that's towards the end of the movie. But his fandom in closing this out and connecting all the films, already, I'm thinking to myself that was the right decision to go and bring him back. Now here's the comment that really stuck out, and there's a couple here, but J.J. Abrams said that these characters to go on this adventure and then face off against the greatest evil, are they prepared? And Stephen Colbert actually picked up on that, and he was like, well, what's the greatest evil? Can you tell me? And then JJ didn't say what it was. Now, again, this could be pointing us in another direction, but this could be, I don't want to say a disinformation campaign, but maybe it's not. But again, the fact that they brought out Ian McDiarmid at the end of the on stage, right, and then you hear the laugh. I love this idea that somehow now I'm on board with it. I know that Christian Harloff on Collider has mentioned how he was convinced that Palpatine was going to make a return, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say about this, seeing how he's been kind of the one person that I've heard out there saying Palpatine's going to come back. I trust that they'll be able to pull it off and they will make it work. But if he is the big potential threat and you're bringing all 9 movies full circle, some people have already pointed this out, and I agree, especially with the title The Rise of Skywalker, then yeah, we're heading towards a Bendemption, which again plays back into the beginning of that trailer potentially being Rey training with Kylo. Okay. All right. My other notes here. Carrie Fisher. I wanted to point this out too. They talked quite a bit about Carrie Fisher. A lot of what we already knew. That they were pulling footage from The Force Awakens, and where they were going to be working around it to make it work for The Rise of Skywalker. The one thing that stuck out to me, and again, I would just encourage you to go back and listen to that to the podcast right before this one that I did, because I touched upon this again, keeping with this idea that everything happens for a reason. There was a lot of reshoots on The Force Awakens, and when Harrison Ford got injured, when the door collapsed on his foot, they went back and rewrote a bunch of it and reshot a bunch of it. And if it hadn't been for that happening, they probably wouldn't have had all that footage from Carrie Fisher to use in Episode 9, and to hear it's almost like it was in a tragic sort of way. Again, it happened for a reason, like it was supposed to. That's the vibe that I got. Like, okay, this is why some things happen, and this is why even horrible things happen, and even when it comes to losing people, right? Here they were able to go and still carry on with the story with Carrie Fisher in doing so. And they would never have been able to do that if it hadn't have been for some of the adversity that they went through on The Force Awakens. And I mentioned on that show, on the previous podcast, how, again, bringing J.J. Abrams on board and the adversity of having to close this out with all of these difficulties and mitigating circumstances, I think is really going to lead to an absolutely amazing film. All right, moving through my notes. Finn is with the Resistance. John Boyega seemed to really zero in on how he's found his place in the Resistance. Phasma's definitely dead. No big surprise there. It was interesting, too, because John Boyega said, somebody asked him about the relationship between him and Rose and whether or not it was going to be expanded or anything, and I kind of got the sense, the way that they were joking around with Poe and with Finn, that Finn and Poe were going to be spending a majority of the movie together, and that Rose would be in the film. And it was awesome to see Kelly Marie Tran come out on stage. I'll talk about that in a moment. But it doesn't sound like they're going to be all that connected within the movie. But the thing that really stuck out to me is that John Boyega said that they were in the middle of war. So they were dealing with all of that. That's the part of it that I've got the big question mark on. All right, so in the middle of war, well, who's fighting who here? Is this a First Order situation? And have they gone to war with the First Order? Does this have to do with the Knights of Ren? I mean, again, sort of opening up the door to the questions that are now going to be asked in the wake of seeing this footage and seeing and watching this panel. And you have to forgive me if I start to get a little scattered. I've got people sending me messages, and I'm doing this particular show live, and normally I have the opportunity to go and pause it, and right now I don't, because I decided to do it live this time. All right, so getting back to my notes. Let's see. Oh, okay. So we'll get to, they asked Daisy Ridley about Kylo Ren, and they were very ambiguous with that. And again, you could have gotten into questions about The Last Jedi. And again, so this is where I wrote in my notes that, not going to lie, I wish Stephen Colbert wasn't doing the panel. Because we ended up wasting how many minutes talking about Kylo Ren and his bare chest in The Last Jedi. I'm sorry. I said I wasn't going to be negative, and I won't. It was awesome, though. Can I just say that it was really awesome to see Kelly Marie Tran come out on stage, and I'm not the biggest. I really like her character in The Last Jedi. I have no problem with her character whatsoever. I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm a fan of Rose in the movie. I just thought she was really good. The nonsense that she had to deal with from that horrible, awful part of the fandom. I did like the vindication of seeing her come out on stage and get the thunderous applause and the standing ovation that she did. Granted, it's not because she's necessarily become an iconic character. To some people, she certainly has. For me, she's not. She's a good character, and I like her character. But it's just so unfortunate that a person like that, who is just doing a job and loving doing her job, has to face unwarranted criticism. I mean, it's very much like Ahmed Best, who played Jar Jar Binks, and what he had to go through. So, and Hayden Christensen, when we had the last celebration, and he came out on stage to a standing ovation and was interviewed as well. I like to see those individuals get some of that love back, to know that they are loved by a big majority of the fan, not the minority of the fandom that act like a whole bunch of, jackass. So that was awesome. On the promo poster that got leaked was that goofy looking alien that everybody was kind of scratching their head over. His name is Clad, K-L-A-D, and they showed him on screen. And I'll tell you what, seeing a picture of him up on screen, he looked pretty cool. He's goofy looking. And we're under the impression that and even J.J. Abrams mentioned that Clad ends up helping the Resistance in some way as they head out on their journey. So that was cool to see as well, and sort of get confirmation. Not like we didn't already know, but obviously confirmation that promo poster was legit. Naomi Ackie came out on stage, her character Janna, which they come across at some point in the film. One of my favorite stills that they showed was this epic shot of her standing there in her full, from the movie, with this sort of grassy field background. Just that picture of her with this huge head of hair, it just looked amazing. I'm really excited to see what her character is about. In that lead character photo, which if you go back and a couple of weeks ago, when that promo poster got leaked and when the character poster got leaked, you can see her character with her bow, which I hope fires off laser blasts like the Night Sisters do in and not arrows. That would seem kind of insufficient to battle in the Star Wars universe. But the Night Sisters from Clone Wars used bows that fired off laser blasts, and I'm kind of hoping that does the same thing as well. Asked her about whether or not Lando Calrissian was her dad, and she kind of dodged the question. Awesome seeing Anthony Daniels up there. Awesome seeing Billy D. Williams up on stage and hearing him talk about his experience making the film. He seemed very overwhelmed by it all in a positive way. His little moment in the teaser of being inside the Falcon with Chewie, I just, that was an epic shot of just him laughing. It doesn't appear that he has a huge role in the film, but be that as it may, it was, I didn't realize how much I would enjoy seeing him back on screen again. For the sequel trilogy, it's always been about these new characters, and I've said that all along. But again, seeing him in the Millennium Falcon was I thought really, really cool. All right, Stephen Colbert's story, and then we'll get to the teaser trailer. Stephen Colbert's story of how he was a fan of Star Wars 3 weeks before anybody else because as a 13-year-old kid, he got preview passes to go see the movie, and then after seeing it and having the reaction that so many of us did, even at 5 years old when I saw A New Hope in the theater with my dad, knowing that and he made the comment that he went back to school and his classmates hadn't seen it, and you not being able to tell them how everything had just changed. That made Stephen Colbert hosting it in any sort of lack of specificity or good questions and answers that he did during the panel. That made it all worth it. That touched me and really meant a lot to me hearing that, because it's true. I mean, that's what it did for so many of us. If it wasn't for, and this may or may not be true, but in my opinion, if it wasn't for, those first groups of fans, those fathers like mine who took their sons like me and my brothers to go see Star Wars in the theater, and then had an impact us the way that it did. That was the movie was obviously what it was, but it was the fandom. It was those of us that went and saw it that ended up creating and helping to at least create in a large part this phenomenon that 40 years on we're still as giddy over. He made the comment that on his best days he's that 13-year-old kid again. And it's true. There's an innocence at that age, and that for so many of us, we we're exposed to the hero's journey through Star Wars and not the mythic stories of King Arthur and Beowulf. We got there through Star Wars and found out about, what it means to be a hero, and to go on that journey through Star Wars. Not the books that my father read as a kid. And so, that's what ended up endearing these stories and this mythology to us at such a young age. So to see Stephen Colbert go and tell that story, it meant a lot to me. I sat down and actually watched A New Hope with my 12-year-old Kyle yesterday. We had this ridiculous April snowstorm here in Minnesota, which is just still snowing outside. It's really stupid. But I was watching Rogue One, and I had every intention of watching A New Hope, and I asked Kyle, I was like, hey, man, you want to come down and sit down and watch this with me? And he did. There were parts of it where he got antsy, and that's not a surprise when you are raising children in the world that we live in right now with available screens at every moment. At one point, he picked up his phone, and I'm like, look, I wasn't mad. I just, hey, I can turn it off. He's like, no, I'll turn my phone off. And we sat down and ended up watching the whole thing. And I took a couple of photos and put them up on Twitter. And, Star Wars, the original New Hope is a much different movie than what we're used to seeing right now. The movies they make now. And somebody made this comment the other day about how the prequels were very much a product of that time in the theater, as much as the original trilogy was, and this current trilogy is certainly very much indicative of the movies we're used to seeing right now. These are the types of movies that get made. They're stylistically different. But even A New Hope was able to continue to capture the imagination and attention of my 12-year-old, and he got into it and was asking questions and was kind of putting pieces together from the bits that he knows. He's pretty much seen all the movies at one point in time, but when it comes to the original trilogy, he just hadn't really just sat down and just watched it all played out. He just kind of would come in and out when his dad was going and watching it. So it made for a really nice couple of days leading up to, what we ended up experiencing here just an hour ago. They rolled Dio out on stage, which was a physical droid that's going to be sort of a partner to BB-8 in the movie. And that particular version, I think the one in the film is going to have a thinner wheel on it. That version was made specifically to be an actual moving prop, and I think they had to make that wheel wider so that he wouldn't go and topple over as a practical remote droid. But that was pretty cool. That was cool to see as well. All right, so let's get into the teaser here real quick. And again, I'm going to be spending a lot of time going through shot by shot in future episodes, and certainly over the weekend when I've got a chance to not only watch it, 100 times more, but also sort of read other people's thoughts and commentaries, because a lot of times I'm able to pull ideas from that. I do at this point in time believe that we're heading towards a Ben redemption. And if I were a betting person right now, I think the rise of Skywalker is probably not as on the nose as what everybody thinks. I had a buddy of mine text me, Rise of Skywalker, which Skywalker? Luke is gone. If at this moment right now, my guess is that Skywalker is going to be what many people have talked about. Is going to be more of a title than it is going to be lineage. In that sort of the rise of Skywalker, I would point to Kylo Ren, to Ben Solo being that, right, bringing out that mighty Skywalker blood that was mentioned in The Last Jedi. And if we take what was said during the panel by J.J. Abrams of face the greatest evil, are they prepared? I don't look at Kylo Ren and go, that's the greatest evil. No, I see the greatest evil as somebody who's been behind the scenes orchestrating this thing all along and was preparing for the end point, the end game, which is where we're heading for in this movie. And that's what it was always going to take, right? For those of us that have been on the Ben-demption bandwagon, it was always going to take another entity, something bigger that Kylo was going to have to come up against. And I mentioned this before, that what if there is a return of Palpatine in some form, right? Or Plagueis for some reason. What if it turns out that Palpatine was actually Plagueis all along? This kind of thing, right? And I don't think the books counteract that, but please feel free to drop me an email if I'm wrong. I'm just totally spitballing here. I'm still just completely taken aback by what it is that I saw. But I had mentioned it before, that what if that's part of the catalyst that brings Kylo back, is that he thinks that now he's the supreme leader, and yet here's another dude to come and knock him down in the middle of when he's still dealing with the dark and the light, and the end of the film is going to have to be a face-off. And there again, we've got the balance of Rey and Kylo going against the ultimate evil, and it really has to be that balance of what was the dark and the light to bring balance to the galaxy and resolve this story once and for all. And that makes sense too. If you think about that, how do we resolve a story that so many people saw in Return of the Jedi as being fully resolved, right? Most people would agree, and I do too, that the end of the Return of the Jedi, it's very definitive, right? We've defeated the Emperor, Vader's been redeemed, and now we're moving forward. Okay. So how do you rectify that in a new trilogy unless there's still some threat out there that wasn't fully gone? That's what makes sense to me. That's how you go, all right, all along, Palpatine has still been out there in some way, shape, or form, right? Plagueis has still been out. And I'm just using Plagueis and Palpatine because we don't know yet, and obviously if they do bring Palpatine back, I think that whole speech ends up having some weight. He could cheat death, but he couldn't save himself kind of thing. So Palpatine learned in some way, shape, or form on, how to go and cheat death. Now you've created a scenario that brings a level of credibility for individuals that were frustrated. Not saying they did it for this reason, but I've heard people make the argument that the sequel trilogy doesn't have enough connective tissue. Why is it there? What are we doing? Well, if that threat wasn't really gone and now they have to finally remove that threat. And it also makes sense with some of the rumors that there's a MacGuffin involved in the film, and that MacGuffin changes throughout the movie. So perhaps that MacGuffin is something alluding to the fact that there's a larger enemy that's out there that they knew about, right? There was a disturbance in the Force. There's something going on. They don't know what it is. They think they're searching for one thing, but it turns out they're actually searching for something else. Also, when you couple in some of the other rumors that we've heard about accessing 3PO's memories, and they have to go and learn more, this could all be a part of it as well that sends them down a path to realize that, oh my gosh, that threat of Darth Sidious, and I keep saying Palpatine, but Darth Sidious, you know what I'm talking about, is actually still out there and still exists. And again, I'm going to have to go and digest it more. Somebody pointed out, too, in the trailer that it looked like Princess Leia was handing over the medallion that was given to either Luke or Han, probably Han, at the end of A New Hope. And again, I'll have to go back and watch it. Look, like I said, we've got plenty of time to go and digest all of this. I'm just here to say that as this Star Wars fan, I could not be any happier with what I saw in that teaser trailer. And I was excited before, not knowing anything. I am through the roof. As Gwendolyn Christie said in the Force Awakens documentary on the Blu-ray, I'm at 6s and 7s. I think it's a British thing. I assume that means that she's on a high. But I'm at 6s and 7s. I've gone to 11 if I can pull Spinal Tap out. That trailer delivered in a way that I was really hoping for and trying to keep my expectations in check, but it absolutely did for a teaser. And this Star Wars fan could not be happier at all. Leave a comment on YouTube. I'll be doing shows throughout the weekend. At some point, we'll get back to listener feedback. A lot of the listener feedback is probably going to get backed up or changed simply because there's a lot more to talk about now. So hopefully I get to your comment. If I don't, please write in your responses to the teaser trailer. We'll definitely be working through that. I will be recording another show tomorrow as more news breaks throughout Celebration this weekend. And we'll certainly be dissecting and looking at the trailer in further detail on upcoming shows. Subscribe on YouTube. I don't ever encourage people to go do that. So go and subscribe on YouTube. You can find the show on YouTube, Spreaker, Stitcher, Podbean, Did I say iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio app? You can find it there as well. You can email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com, talkshownerd at gmail.com. And I'm looking forward to getting your feedback and again, responding to your reaction to the Rise of Skywalker. Oh my gosh, I love that name. So there was the Ain't It Cool report. So getting back to that right here, now we know all those stupid rumors and reports were all wrong. There was the Ain't It Cool report where somebody had gone and said that it was Skywalker's, and so they were close. It was the Rise of Skywalker, and it's perfect. And I kind of had that feeling all along, right? I mean, you've got a $1 billion project you're working on. You're not going to screw something up like the name, right? Right, the Rise of Skywalker, it's just perfect, and it really kicks open the door wide for all kinds of speculation. And I can't wait to finish up this show and then go listen to other people go and talk about Star Wars. I'm really looking forward to this weekend. All right, thanks for checking the show out. And if you're listening live, thanks. Don't do it live very often. As a matter of fact, I think it's been like 2 years since I've done a live show. But again, follow, subscribe on YouTube, follow all the other places where you can go and find the show. Talkshownerd@gmail.com. And of course, it wouldn't be my show if I didn't go and plug my book, my science fiction space opera, Embark. It is available now on Amazon.com in ebook, paperback, and audiobook narrated by me. The follow-up, Embark, Treasure in Darkness, will be out in June. It's done. I'm editing it right now. But go and pick yourself up Embark if you want to read something that's not Star Wars, but written by a mega Star Wars fan who wanted to create his own universe just like George Lucas. The reviews have been spectacular, and I'm so pleased with the response that I've received from it so far, and thank you for those that have gone and reviewed it and purchased it. But if you haven't, again, go to Amazon.com, search for Embark, and Jon Justice. You will find it. Find it there. It's a story of a protagonist, the girl he loves, the world coming to an end, and a corporate madman who's looking to exploit the disaster while humanity heads to the stars to escape. And again, it's the first of a trilogy, and I hope you go and pick it up if you haven't already. I'm going to go watch that teaser trailer like a dozen more times and consume as much Star Wars commentary from other people as I possibly can. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back tomorrow for another show. That'll be Saturday. Here's Obi-Wan Kenobi to take you out.
The Force will be with you, always.
My nerd world.